Hello, my friends. I'm going to walk you through the Serverless Application Model, which is effectively a toolkit for creating serverless applications using AWS. Let me go ahead and do a screen share here to get us started. So if you are a person that does serverless application development, which would include let me move my camera over here a little bit, which would include doing Lambda functions and dynamoDB, then this is a tutorial for you. Now, oftentimes I write my own tutorials, but in this case, I'm going to be using the AWS one because it can change on a regular basis. And I'm going to walk through this for students who are enrolled in one of my classes that might benefit from seeing me go through it. I remember there were times when I went through this when I thought, if if somebody, if an expert's not walking you through it, you might get stuck. And so that's my purpose in doing that today. All right, so with that, we should be seeing the middle screen for me. Okay, serverless application model. Some of the things that are going to be part of this as part of creating a production rate grade application are that you have to have things like a code pipeline. So you pull your code from a code repository and push it into AWS's infrastructure. You're likely going to want to have things like testing and production environments. And so this toolkit allows you to get set up with the basics. Well, basically, well, all those things. Your code pipeline, your infrastructure in AWS, different environments. It's a lot of stuff that can be outside of just creating your first Lambda function within the AWS console itself. So this is a big, robust framework that you can use. It also involves its own templating language. So if you've used CloudFormation before or Terraform, there is those languages can be, if you will, can be more expansive and rich than you want. And so this is meant to be like a shorthand version of doing infrastructure as code. Yeah, so it's shorter. All right, let's go ahead and get started, and I'll stop talking. Now, this could take forever. Let me just go down here. It says it could take 2 to 4 hours. Man, I hope it doesn't take that long. Um, if I need to, I will cut this up into two parts. All right, so as we go through this, it's comprised of several modules. Says you can do them separately. Serverless apps, and you should clean up at the end. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, they apparently offer this on site at certain AWS events, and so there's some reference to that, but we're just doing it in their online version. And so they mentioned here, are you doing the hosted event or are you doing self-service, basically what you're doing with me, doing it on your own? And it says you need to go through the system setup section if you're doing it on your own and not using one of their computers, I suppose, somewhere else. So let's go ahead and click this link right here. Now, I've been doing this for several years, and it used to be that they had this IDE, Integrated Development Environment, that was a lot like Microsoft Visual Studio Code, VS Code, and it was called Cloud9. And it worked fantastically for doing a lot of cool things development in the cloud. And then they basically deprecated it. So unless you have an old existing account in AWS, if you have a newer account, then it won't show up as an option for you anymore. So therefore, somewhat unfortunately, we're going to go through these options for setting it up on your local computer. And I've done this a couple different ways, and I hate installing stuff on my local computer. I typically will try to use Docker containers so that I don't have to install any particular version of Python or Node that changes from week to week. And once it's installed, it's already outdated. So I like using Docker containers for a lot of things. And I just, it was just too hard to do that for most people. And so and also limited some of the functionality of this toolkit, if I recall correctly. So after all that, I have reluctantly gone down the route of installing everything that they say here. So one of them, let me pull this over. The first thing is Docker Desktop. So you go over to their website, which is listed right here. and you download Docker Desktop for whatever your computer type is and install that. And that allows you to run containers locally that are going to help facilitate a lot of what happens in here. I think they use it as part of the build process. There's now, weirdly, for some people, there are two different CLIs or command line environments. And so the first one is called the SAM CLI, and it has functionality in it for creating applications, going through a menu to scaffold your SAM-based application. That includes things like Lambda functions and DynamoDB and API gateway. So let's click on that and see what we see. We come over here and it says, um, oh, interesting. Is this your first time using it? Mm. Okay, I'm gonna admit I forgot about this part. And so there's two parts to this. One is you come down to whatever your operating system is, and you follow their installation instructions. Like in this case, it's click on this link, and after it goes through the visual installer, um, let me bring over my window. After you go through the visual installer, it's going to look like this, which SAM. And it shows that it's basically installed somewhere. And if I go SAM hyphen hyphen version, um, that looks good. Okay, but I just noticed this thing in the top, and that's probably why I wanted to make this, is because you have to, man, in addition to setting up all this stuff, you also have to have some prerequisites done as well. So it says create an admin user, give them an access key ID, an access key, um, and then you're going to need to install the AWS CLI and you're going to configure the credentials. All right. Well, let's just go ahead and do that. I'm going to go to my AWS account and I'm going to go and look for, it's already here, but I'll just type in IAM and I'm going to go to users. Oh, here, I've got one called Sam Admin that I did 34 days ago. Let me just see what's in here. So I come in and I've got a policy attached here called Administrator Access. And what this is going to mean in the long run is that basically there's a username and password, in other words, that are associated with this user that I can embed in software and stuff, and then they can access my AWS account. So there's some, and do everything in the AWS account as if they were an administrator. Now, of course, there's some security issues related to this, so use it carefully, and typically I would delete it afterwards. Um, all right, so let me go and I'm just going to go ahead and delete this since let me just double check a couple things, what I think I'm going to need since I've done it before. So I've got an access key. All right, so let me go ahead and delete this guy and I will create it a second time. It's actually kind of nice to see what we're looking for before we create it. So again, I go over to users and I want an administrative user with a username and password. So I do sam admin, and I don't need them to log in through the visual console that we're looking up here. I just want them to be able to access, I just want to basically a username and password that I can embed into my CLI for this lab. All right, so I'm going to click next, and I'm going to attach a policy directly, and I will select administrator access from the policies, and I will say next. And now I will create them. All right, so there's my SAM admin. They haven't done anything yet, and I need to create some credentials, and I want to create an access key for them. So I think I could do it there, or I could do it here. I don't know that it matters too much. Um, let's go to create access key, and I want to use it for the CLI. So I will click that, and they're saying, hey, there's some other options you could use at this date and time. And I kind of understand that. And I just want to make sure I've got a place to write this down. So I click that, and I don't want to tag this. And there it is. There's my basically my username and password for accessing my AWS account. We'll get back to that in a minute. I'm going to copy that and I pasted it in another window. And I'm going to copy that. I could reveal it for you. It looks uh, about twice as long as that string and comparable, but I don't think I will. Yes, I've got my info. All right. Actually, you'll see it in a minute anyway, because I got to copy and paste it. So, and I'll delete this user later, so it won't be a big deal. All right. So we have created some credentials. Now we still need to install and configure the AWS CLI, which is separate from and perhaps more expansive than the SAM CLI, which is more of a subset. So two different CLI programs. Now, if we come back over here, it says the second option is to install the AWS CLI. And the process for that is dependent on your operating system. So if I come down here, it basically says you click on this link in your browser, and um, in some cases, if you're not doing it for every user um, on your installed on your system, you could do this alternative thing, but I don't think you have to. So you just follow the GUI prompts and you have it installed. And then you should be able to test it by doing the following. Oops. You type in which AWS, and then you do AWS hyphen version. Okay. And then we have to configure it. So let me click on this. Configuration credential file. Let's see if this one's going to work for us. Um, short-term credentials. Okay, we could do that. All right, hold on a second. Like I know how this works. I'm supposed to type in a command like AWS configure, I think is the command. But before I go, I don't know, I don't waste your time, so let me just pause for 1 second. Oh, lovely. There was like this huge long pause. I stopped screen sharing, but I didn't stop recording. Oh, that is so lame. Okay, well, anyway, maybe I'll have to edit the video, which I find particularly annoying. Anyway, so uh, in all of these links, there's an option here for clicking where it says authenticating with short-term credentials or whatever. Um, and actually, I want to create authenticate with long-term credentials. Whew. So I click on that, and it says to do what we just did. We created an IAM user, get your keys, and then use AWS configure. So let me just put that up here, and we'll type in AWS configure, and it says enter in some of this info. And let me go ahead and copy, oops, and paste. Looks like it had another one saved in here from a previous time that I did this. All right, and so now you can see my secret info there that I'd rather you not see. So now I have to delete it after this video. Default region, I will work out of US East 1. That's fine. And default output, I don't know that if it really matters for me. So I think I'm good to go at this point. All right, so let's go down to the next thing. So after you've installed and configured desktop, SAM CLI, AWS CLI, you're supposed to have a Git client. And if I type in git hyphen v, it says I've got Git installed. If you don't have Git installed, you can click on this link. Oh, by the way, if you want to find this online, you just Google the complete AWS SAM workshop and you will find it online. Um, Git client. So if I click that, it talks about different ways that you could install stuff. And so once you've got it all done right, then you can type git hyphen v and it'll show you that it's installed. And then lastly, I very reluctantly again install programming languages on my computer because they change so constantly. But I experimented with this lab a bunch of ways and I just didn't see a way around it. You kind of need it for pre-packaging before it goes up and testing before it goes into the cloud where your Lambda functions and stuff ultimately get deployed. So, boo. So I installed stuff and I am good to go. So I can type in, let's just find this again, node hyphen version, and I've got one of the versions installed. All right, so I'm ready to go on to the next step. Well, so I'll go ahead and click next. Um, This is if you are using their Cloud9 environment, which you cannot do. Upgrade. Oh, this says upgrade to a newer version if you're in Cloud9. That should not be our problem at all. And it says do SAM version if it's less than 172, you got a problem. And we did SAM version. Wait, what? Well, hold on a second. 172. I could 1.132. Well, um, let let me just double check and make sure that I am on the most current version, and then I will continue on if there happens to be a problem. Okay. I just did this a couple weeks ago, so I don't think that there's supposed to be a problem, but just in case, I went back to the install SAM CLI option, uh, and let's just see um, what we need to do. Well, first it says I need to uninstall a previous version. Oh man, this is going to get ugly. This is a terrible video. All right, I'll try and follow this and we'll see what happens. So to install it on your computer from before, click that. My heavens. Okay, so supposedly I did that. Oh, oh, that's awesome that I just literally typed in what they said and it's not, there's like a red replace part. Oh, this is so humiliating. Okay, hold on a second. You know what? You probably don't need to re reinstall, so uninstall. So I'll just come back in a minute when I've got this uninstalled so I can install for the first time. Okay, let's go ahead and as part of the install sequence, I'm going to use this option for my Mac and we shall see what happens. I'll go to this delete folder and I am installing. All right, and just in case, I will hit exit there. Because sometimes when stuff gets installed and listed in the path of the computer, um, you have to stop or you have to like open and close the terminal. So just preemptively, I'm going to do that. And off it goes. Cool. All right, let's try this one more time. And what we're looking for at the end is to be able to type which SAM. Okay, which SAM, and then we'll say SAM hyphen hyphen version, drum roll. Okay, that's the exact same one I had installed a minute ago. So I don't know what's going on there. Um, I wonder how they're counting there. Well, that's like weird and awkward. Oh, I guess the way that they were doing their versions is different than what I was thinking. I was thinking in terms of decimals, and I guess 132 is technically higher than their preferred version of 172. So that was all worthless what I just did. Nice. Okay, let's go. Let's go on to here. Let's all right. Okay, back to this tutorial. We start right there. Let's create a SAM app. They're noting that it's a combination of lots of different things. This next part is 10 minutes long. Whew. Well, hopefully we're on to the easier parts right now. So in order to start an application, I'd actually like to change where things are at in terms of the working directory. So I'm going to go for me, um, downloads to delete, and I just created a folder called SAM1. So within this empty folder, and just in case you want to see that visually, um, that is right here. It's just an empty folder, and it's at this path on my computer. We're going to type in SAM init. And it says, what would you like to use? And by the way, I could also do this from within Visual Studio Code by opening up a terminal window, and I might do that in just a little bit. All right, we are going to use the Quick Start template, and we want to use the Hello World example. So also number one, and then it's going to ask which language do you want to use? Do you want to use Python? And I'm going to say no. And interestingly, that they tell you that in here. They're like, don't pick Python, wherever that option shows up. And even their, well, anyway, says, do you want to pick Python? No. Which runtime do you want to use? And their screenshot, if I recall, is out of date. And I believe that I can pick the very latest node, which will be 11, which is a little bit ambitious. We shall see what happens. I guess if we get stuck, we'll have to come back. What type of file do you want to use when you package this thing up? And so what they're thinking about here is you're creating some files locally on your computer for development, and then when you deploy it, it needs to just get sent up basically in one file. And one way it could do that is to create a Docker image, and the other way is it could create a zip file. And so zip file is what they have you do, or anyway, as part of this tutorial. And then we're going to do a starter template. Would you like to enable X-ray? And that is going to be no. Would you like to enable monitoring, special monitoring? This is beyond the scope of what we're talking about. Um, let's see, also no. And they gave us another option, which is, would you like to set structured logging in JSON in your Lambda functions? Uh, no. Okay, so this thing is going to be called SAM app. And so this is the default. And I hit return, and it said, I just generated a scaffold for your project. And if you were using the VS Code, or sorry, the Cloud9 IDE, which most people can't get access to anymore, you would see all the things it created. Let me show you this from a couple different perspectives. So in this folder where I was working, it created a directory called SAMapp, and it put a bunch of files in there, including like a Lambda function. And it's even got stubs for doing unit testing related to that Lambda function, for sending in events to your Lambda function. So it's a pretty robust set of cool stuff. But you can't really, it's not easy to look at this stuff without a text reader. So yes, I could do everything using like nano or VI from the terminal, but like we're not cavemen. Actually, I prefer using those kind of tools, but um, most people don't. So let me just go ahead. I've opened up VS Code, which you can download and install. I will say open a folder. I will go to this area and I think this is probably good enough. I'll just say open this and I'm going to close that welcome screen and expand things. So now I can see the directory of things that were created by previously typing sam init. So I created a bunch of stuff. Let's go on to the next page. All right, so let's just read this for a second. The SAM Hello World project initializes a Lambda function and an API gateway that will expose basically a URL that has / hello included into it. It says you're going to call it with get, and basically you can visit it with a web browser or programmatically. And then you're going to hit API gateway. It's going to invoke a function which is going to need an IAM role in order to interact with other AWS resources. Typically, when you create a Lambda function, it always has to be created with a role that gives it permission to talk to CloudWatch so that it can do logging for everything. And then you can expand on whatever role is there to also give it access to things like you can also talk to other things in my account like DynamoDB. All right, so let's next talk about the structure of the project. So we have a SAMapp template.yaml file. So let's look at that. There it is. And so we can see it here or we can see it on their screen, either one. It's going to be comparable. So let's see what it says in here. It says that this is um, a SAM template file. And a SAM template file is similar to a other infrastructure as code like CloudFormation, but this one is going to be shorter. And maybe that doesn't look super short to you, but it's actually not bad for what it does. So let's just I'm not going to teach everything that's in here, but you can set some global settings that you would use repeatedly in the things that follows. So you don't really need to worry about that too much. Resources are the things that you're going to be creating in AWS. And so it always has like a name that's just an arbitrary variable name that you make up. And then that'll be followed by um, what is the thing that's being created. So in the SAM template language, this is uh, basically a little command that says that this is going to be a Lambda function. These three words separated by double colons. And then it gives some configuration settings for your Lambda function, saying that let's see, it's going to have a hello half / world URL associated with it, and there's going to be a Lambda handler entry point in the Lambda function. So the code isn't listed in here. The code's somewhere else, but it's saying that this is the entry point for whenever whenever the Lambda function gets triggered. It's saying whenever we run this function, we want it to run in a certain container that has a certain programming language installed in it. And let's see, events. It says that there's going to be an API call that can access this. We're going to name our API hello world, and the way to get to it is by doing the URL that gets created / hello, and then it says that it's going to create some outputs when this stuff is created. Now, this is just like a generic idea, but when this actually happens, it generates a real URL. So this shows the URL with some variables intermixed that get generated from the material up above. And there's going to be an output area somewhere where we can see this. So there's an API, there's a function with a unique identifier called its ARN, and it's going to have an IAM role. So three different things it created, which corresponds with the thing on the previous page. All right. It mentions that this template adheres to this formatting specification. There's a little bit of reading there about the settings for our function. And then depending on which language you use, um, well, anyway, you can see how it looks relatively similar if you use different programming languages. Um, Okay, and it says, notice that we haven't created our IAM role explicitly in this file. And that's one of the tricks about using SAM is that oftentimes um, if you're building everything by hand, you specify one thing at a time. One of the tricks about SAM is that it just assumes that you need certain things and it creates it for you. So that's either good or bad. It's kind of good in that you have less to do when you're setting things up, which is kind of a nice thing. But you have to know, it's also nice to know what it's creating for you. Um, so I already talked about the other items. So let's go ahead and go to our next page. And now it says, let's look at our Lambda function. So there's our code. Let's see what our real one looks like because with each iteration of this thing, it creates different functions. So what I mean by that is the function might look a little bit different if it's node 18 versus 22 versus 16. So let's just see what got created here. So here's what it looks like. There's a function called Lambda handler. It's going to get passed in some information, and this is a JSON object that corresponds to anything that came in from API Gateway, just in case we need to read it. This function actually doesn't read it, but it could. This tells you a little bit about the container information that you could read if you wanted to. But usually we just care about the HTTP request that's coming in from a user. And without doing anything with this data, we just create a JSON object with a success code and a message that just says hello world. So there's the magic. And we need to probably just send that back to our API gateway is what's implied here. All right. Do. And so it talks a little bit about what those things are if you want to do more reading. Okay, run locally. Now that you have a SAM application, let's go ahead and run it with the SAM CLI. And there's a development workflow. Um, and you think of the cloud as fast, but really it's annoying if you have to check things in, basically push it up to the cloud every single time you make a change to your code. So part of this framework is the idea that you're running all of your stuff locally, and then if you're happy with it, then you can push it up to your AWS account. So that's kind of says SAM local performs live reload. So as you're making code changes, it automatically updates it in your locally running code. So yeah. All right, so in this module, it says let's run it locally, and we're going to understand the development workflow, run some unit tests, yeah, and use SAM local to run the functions in a local environment for testing. Right on, dude. Okay, it's common practice to. Okay, so it says we need to basically do npm install to pick up any packages that are specified. All right, so let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So I come back to here and I go terminal, new terminal. Now, keep in mind that I do have this open, but I don't want to use this. I would prefer to use what's in, anyway, sorry. I would prefer to, what have I done? I would prefer to use the terminal down here. There we go. Sorry, I don't know, messed that up. Um, Okay, so there's a package.json right here, which includes the dependencies that need to be installed. Huh, seems like there's going to be an issue with one of these. I can't remember what it is, but at any rate, let's go ahead and plug on through. So if I get my terminal working directory to the right folder, which is going to be SAM app, so I go cd SAM app and I can see that Hello World is there in a folder. I need to get into the hello world folder. And then so there's that in my package. So I want to actually install the packages. So I go npm install. And it looks like it's got some warnings, but I think it still works. And so we're doing okay. So it says in flight and glob. Some dependencies that are part of these are anyway, they're a little bit deprecated, it sounds like at this point. But isn't that life? Okay, so we're good. We've installed. Let's go to our next step. It says there's two ways of running a serverless app locally. One is by invoking an individual Lambda function, SAM local invoke, and then pass in an event, or by running a local HTTP server that simulates the API gateway. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you. If you think about this visually, and let's see if I can come back here for a second. So what we're saying is that from the command line, we can simulate interacting directly with the Lambda function, or we can simulate running a local API gateway that interacts with that for us. So we can do either one of those. And let's see if it's going to. This one is saying it recommends doing the HTTP server. So let's go ahead and so let's first do this. All right, let's. That's kind of weird, if I'm being honest. I can't remember if I need this or not. Let's go ahead and run it because they told us to. And yeah, you can do whatever. It says login succeeded, so that sounds good. Um, I'm just looking at it and it says like ECR usually means Elastic Container Repository, so it just means interacting with their Docker infrastructure for hosting Docker containers. So looks like we needed to authenticate to it there. Okay, so let's go ahead. It says test your endpoint. Okay, one of the ways that we can do this is, um, that can't be right. It says, oh, it says only do that if you get an error message. Okay, whatever. All right, so, am I just like the worst? Hey, I do this all the time, but it's hard to read and talk at the same time. Okay, so I basically need to get back out of that one folder, change the working directory up one level, and then run this command. Okay, so I might not have needed to do this thing, although it doesn't hurt anything. So cd present working directory. So I'm in the SAM app folder. I type this in. So basically, SAM program locally start an API gateway using stuff that's in this project and run it on port 8080. And let's go ahead and see what happens. Initializing the functions, building an image through the power of Docker. I have Docker running right now with Docker Desktop, so I think that had to be turned on in order for this building an image part to work. So this is probably only going to take a long time the very first time that you do it because it's pulling some stuff down. And la 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 la. It shouldn't take too long, but maybe I'll just hit pause. Nope. Okay. There we go. It says you can go here and see it running. All right, let's go ahead and test it. I didn't even need to pause the video. There we go. And crossing fingers. Internal server error. All right, well, let me go see what happened. Um, Invalid Lambda response received. Lambda response must be valid JSON. Okay, well, let me go ahead and debug for a second, and because I'm following their instructions, so it should work. Let me see if I can find out what's wrong. All right, so weirdly, I just waited like 5 seconds, hit refresh, and I stopped getting an error message. So apparently, it just wasn't quite done doing whatever setup it needed. So that was a moment of terror for a moment, um, because I thought, hey, maybe their stuff is broken. But it wasn't. It just needed a couple more seconds to set up for the very first time, and then it was good to go. Okay, sweet. So it is working. We've done very little work other than doing like SAM init, and basically we did this other command called where'd it go? SAM local some whatever the command, SAM local start API, and it just worked. And we had some basic boilerplate code to get started with. All right, let's see what we've got then. So we've tested it, we're happy, and it works. It says, notice that Sam is pulling a Docker image. This makes sense because that's how it operates. It can run it locally through a Docker container, running node, as well as when it's in the cloud, your code will also be in a Docker container. Um, so it's kind of weird because, sorry, I'm going to go on a tangent here. When it's running, it's actually in a container. But in order, so we shouldn't have needed to install any programming languages here. But I think that for purposes of software testing, before you get to the container, I think maybe that's why. Like, it sounds broken to me, but they force you to have the language running locally to run the unit tests before it goes into the container to be viewed locally. I think that's what it's there for. Okay, now it says let's make a code change. Let's change it to hello, my friend. Sweet, you're my friend. All right, hello, my friend. And I hit save. And oh, it says the source code is changed. Terminate its warm container. The new container will be created in lazy mode. So what we believe is happening is that we didn't have to run the start command again to get the changes to be picked up. So let's go ahead and just check that before reading the rest of the tutorial. Ooh, that's a long, oh, yeah, it says hello, my friend. So there's a little bit of a pause. And the first time you do it, it was slow, but then it's like super fast in subsequent iterations. Cool. All right. So that worked, and that's nice. Okay, now it says let's run the unit tests. So we've already done npm install. Let's do npm run test. All right, so let's see what we've got here. So let me hit, well, there's a couple different ways I could do this. Do I want to stop this? Let me just try this. Control C, and that will have stopped this. I could have just opened up a new terminal window, but let's not. All right, I need to run it from the folder where the code is found. So I'll go cd hello world, and here's a bunch of stuff, including tests. Let's look at what is in tests. So even if you've never seen this method of testing before, um, we say all right, let's read as much as we can. Um, it says this is a function and it's verifies successful response, and we're going to make a call to the lambda function, and we're passing it into it an event. And sorry, I'm like hemming and hawing a little bit here because I'm just wondering if we're getting using the event anywhere. I don't know if we are. Sorry for my incompetence there. Like if I go up here into another folder, you can pass in a sample event, but I'm not sure if it's using that um, anywhere. It describes the variable. It doesn't use it. Maybe we'll get to that later. I don't know. But what it does say is basically run the function, which is just that one file name, right? We're gonna, and we want to make sure that what comes back gives us a success message, and that when we're reading the response.message that it says hello world. So the response.status code should be 200, and the response.body.message should be hello my friend. Actually, let's just look at that one more time. Um, response.body. Oh, well, response.message. Oh, so take result.body and call that response, and then response.message is hello world. So the result.status code will be 200, but it's gonna fail on basically result.body.message is not going to be equal to hello world anymore. So that's what we're showing off. Um, all right, so coming back over to here, we do npm run test. And also, let's just look over here to our package.json file. It says whenever you type npm run test, it's going to run the program mocha tests unit and whatever files are in that folder. So that's what's happening. All right, so npm, we already did npm install, so we don't need to do that again, but we'll do npm run test. All right, so I'm going to say npm run test, and we get some messages back. And it said uh, we had 0 passing and tests index. None of my tests passed, and it failed. And it says we failed on the assertion that hello, my friend is equal to hello world. And here's the problem. And then it kind of looks like it's a bad error message, but this is actually what it's supposed to look like. Looks like Christmas, doesn't it? Green and red. Anyway, this is correct, and so we're happy with this. So we got an assertion error. Now we need to fix the unit test. Um, we changed the response message to hello, my friend. This is easy fix. Let's update the unit test. Expect it to look for hello, my friend, and run it again. Cool. All right, let's do that. So we'll come back over to here, and we'll say, hello, my friend. Save. Come back over here, npm run test. And now everything ran happily, and we even got a checkbox. I wonder how they make a pretty checkbox in a terminal window. That's amazing. That's nice. All right, so we're good to go. All right, so how long should we go before I split this video in two? Let's go ahead and try to do the next one. This one says deploy manually. Oh, by the way, what does this mean? So we just ran it locally. So whatever we're seeing right here in terms of our testing and all this stuff, it's just running in containers on our local computer. It's not running in AWS. So you're doing a development cycle locally first, using your Lambda stuff, and then we need to know how to push it out to AWS. So that's what this one should be about. It says, before we build a whole CI/CD pipeline, let's learn how to build, package, and deploy our application up to the server. All right. Okay. Artifacts. So in the build process, it says basically a zip file is going to be filled with things like um, how many Lambda functions do you need up in your AWS environment? Do you want to put it into production and development URLs? Do you have things segmented that way? Do you have testing? So anyway, it creates artifacts whenever it does the build process, and it needs to get pushed up. We can put it in a zip file. Let's see. Okay. let's see. The first artifact that gets generated is your application code and supporting libraries. By default, these are put in a compressed zip file. They're uploaded to an S3 bucket during the package phase, the package template. The second artifact that the SAM CLI generates during the package phase is the package template, which is a copy of your project's template.yaml file, which we've looked at before, except this one references the location of the zip file in an S3 bucket. Interesting. Notice that the code URI references the S3 bucket rather than a local directory. This is how AWS is able to pull your code at deployment time. Okay, so all your stuff that's in your basically code folder is going to be put into a zip file and put into an S3 bucket for reference when it's up in the servers. Okay, build the app. To build an app, we use the SAM build command. And it iterates and it looks for certain files that give it support in its build process. And we do this not within the code folder, but in the project folder higher up. So let us try that. And so I go cd and I type in SAM build and it says build succeeded. And we saw it create this folder right here, this .aws.sam. And so basically it takes a copy of whatever it feels like it needs and it puts it in this folder. It has not been pushed yet, but it's ready to go. This is the set of instructions in its lengthy way that need to be pushed up to the cloud. And it might tell us to look at it right now. Okay, build completed, show your hidden files, explore the build folder. It created a bunch of great stuff for us. Um, the build folder includes the app.js file as the entry point for the Lambda application, the node modules directory with the dependencies, and the package.json. Well, let's just see if that's true. So in here, we've got a build folder with a hello world function, and it's actually not app.js with modern Node, it's app.mjs. But like I said, it's a copy of a lot of the stuff down there, um, and you can look at it if you want. Oh, build and hello world function. Let's just see if it was in that one too. Build and hello world function. Yeah, so that's what we were looking in. Cool. Um, I don't find that part particularly interesting to look at because that's like their managed stuff. And so we don't, I mean, you could debug, but you probably shouldn't be manually messing with anything that's in that folder. You type SAM build and it just takes working stuff from your local computer. And this is like code innards, the inside of a computer. You're like, okay, you do whatever you want, but that's not like my part. The tool is supposed to create this and it's supposed to be right. All right, so let's go and deploy it now. And so SAM deploy hyphen hyphen guided. All right, here we go. Come down here. I'm going to type in clear SAM deploy hyphen hyphen guided. All right, what do you want to call it? So when you look in the area of your console called cloud formation, it tells you the stacks, which means like whole applications, VPCs, everything related to an application that's been deployed all under one variable name that you could literally delete the whole big, huge application and all of its infrastructure with one variable name. And it's saying the stack name, the variable name for everything that's going to get built, is going to be called SAM app. We'll take the default, show you resource changes to be deployed. Confirm changes before deploy, yes or no? Um, confirm changes before deploy. They said, okay, default is no. So let's go with no. Looks like they changed the default. And they said no. I think they make a little comment somewhere in one of these saying, I don't know if it's on this screen or another, where they're like, yeah, our list of options might change, but just make sure you get all of these options selected correctly. Allow SAM CLI to create roles, disable rollback. No. All right, let's just see what we got. SAM creation, yes. Disable rollback, no. Um, hello world function has no authentication. Is that okay? We're going to break from the default and say yes. Save arguments to a configuration file. I believe that's going to be a yes. And there is a configuration file name and that. All right. And it should be doing its business right now. Do, 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 do. And if you've done this lots of times, um, you see that it's adding a bunch of different resources up there. So it's saying it's creating a permission in our account up in the cloud, a role, a function, a Lambda function, an API gateway called deployment, and an API gateway called stage, if that's correct. Um, and there is an actual API. Okay. So yeah, so I think this they're saying that we're gonna have like both testing and staging versions of our app out there. And that was built into our, we actually didn't look at any of the configuration files that showed us that they were going to do that, but it's in there somewhere. All right, so it's talk, oh, there we go. Sweet. All right, so let's scroll a little bit and it says the process that was creating everything. And then in the outputs here, it shows us the URLs for the things that were created. So, well, at least I thought it sounded like there was going to be a production and development stage, but I don't know. We'll see. Um, so it output some things that were specified in some files saying that this is a role that was created that has certain functions or permissions associated with it. It says here is a URL that's available in the cloud now. So basically, we're running it locally here on our computer, and it's also running in the cloud where it's been pushed to. Um, and here's a unique identifier, but we don't really, for our Lambda function, but we don't really care about that. So moving on, it says you can test your URL. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to copy this, come out here, hit paste, and it says, hello, my friend, on an actual URL associated with API gateway. If you wanted to get like super tricky, you could do as they recommend. And if you have the curl command installed on your computer, I don't know if that was the best way to do that. Curl, and then let me copy. So I had to install curl, I think, on my computer. You might have to install it on one of yours if you want it to work this way. So if you're a little bit lazy, this is like a web browser in a way. You can send out requests to the internet and do a lot of other fun things with this without having to go to a browser tab to view things. All right, so it tells us what just happened. That let's just kind of read through it. We got our code packaged as a zip file. We had an S3 bucket created as needed. Our resources from our local computer were pushed up to that S3 bucket. There is a template, a SAM template file that is similar to our previous one, but it has a URL for the S3 bucket. And then SAM starts the deployment of your code that is in the location indicated in your YAML file. Um, and it uses the CloudFormation technology on the back end to create something called sets. So that's a set running in production. So, or stack rather, sorry. It's a stack. And then a change set is just if you make updates to this in the future, it smartly knows whether it needs to replace like just one code file or something more bigger than that. Okay, it says the first time you do a deployment, a new file is created in our project that looks like this, that includes the location of your S3 bucket. Um, and in the few, anyway, so this is in there, and sometimes you need to debug things when you're not doing a tutorial, but doing things in production on an ongoing basis. And this stuff is listed there. All right, so let me see where we're at. Module 3 still, inspect your deployment. So let's go, it says go into CloudFormation and see what's there. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to come over here and I'll type in CloudFormation. And we've got something here called SAM app. And we click on it and we can see the things that were created in the cloud all within this one variable name. And so theoretically, we could just hit delete and release these resources from our AWS account. So it's a stack of resources. And then here's an outputs tab. So within any of your infrastructure as code files, you specify outputs, and outputs will show up, well, A, in this little text area right here, and B, it'll show the exact same thing in this table. So, um, and it includes the URL that was created as part of this process. All right, so let's see if it tells us to do anything else. So the outputs corresponds to this text in our YAML file. And okay, now it says, let us delete this app that we just created. Oh man, we worked so hard. I had a student once tell me they feel so cheated. They put hours creating some cool infrastructure and then we just delete it. But that's okay. We're going to replace it with bigger and better infrastructure in our next step. So we're going to go back to the SAM app directory. If we're not already there, type SAM delete and watch what happens. So we're already there. If I type in present working directory, and well, actually, let me just double check. SAM. Okay. And I will type in SAM delete. Do you want to destroy everything? Yes, I do. Do you want to get rid of the stuff up in S3? Yes, I do. And so while it's doing that, which might take a moment, let's see if we can watch what's happening over here. So I come over here and I say stacks, I refresh, and it says delete in progress. So momentarily, this will finish and, well, anyway, we don't need to hang out that long. So just trust me, it's going to finish. So let me go ahead and stop the video. Well, actually, I don't need to. It's already done. Um, but it has now disappeared from our list of infrastructure as code-based stacks of applications and configuration resources. All that stuff has disappeared from our AWS account. So recap, we can create an application with SAM build, deploy, and we can take it back down with SAM delete. And so in the next set of videos, I will walk through a new application and we will go through a CI/CD pipeline and pushing things out and some other topics. So let me go ahead and stop there and I will see you in the next video.